Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities. You are about to listen to a conversation in the relationship series in the Consciousness Anywhere podcast. Relationships are like snowflakes and fingerprints. They are completely unique. We hope that you find some magic, some ease, some peace, some possibility for you in your relationships somewhere in this relationship series. Enjoy. We love you. Yay. How does it get better than this? Welcome, my beautiful friends, Tiffany and Sewell.
Thank you.
Hi.
So if you're tuning into this, you, the listener, know that you are listening to a relationship-focused series on the Consciousness Anywhere podcast that is going throughout the entirety of the year of 2025. Tiffany and Sewell are some of my oldest friends, like literally. There's also something really cool I remembered this morning, actually, Sewell, before we started. We did a podcast, you and I think it's episode 21. So to put that in perspective, this episode will probably be like 100 and something. Mm-hmm. So and the title of that podcast I did with Sewell was called You're Not Wrong. And if you want to listen to that after this, we'll link it in the show notes. I then got a really big giggle because I was scrolling through the podcast episodes and I saw I did a podcast called What's Wrong With Me? So we'll also link that one below to really dig into, getting at a judgment. So thank you, Tiffany and Sewell, for being willing to come on and contribute to this like different relationship conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you for having these conversations too. I think they're so valuable in the world.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, I think if you haven't listened to a lot of these relationship conversations already, listeners, you might hear me say sort of something repeatedly, which is, or if you have listened, you would hear me say this a lot, like relationship is such a huge part of our lives and it can really make us or break us. And we're given basically no education about how to do it well. So this is my social, my public service to, if anyone's interested, trust you. This is like the relationship that works for you is completely up to you. And if you can gain anything from the contribution of what the amazing people I'm having on these podcasts can share, awesome. So Tiffany and Sewell are access facilitators. Actually, I don't know if Sewell's an access facilitator right now, but anyways, it's basically, he's, so a lot of where they've developed and I actually would love for you guys if you would just even share a little bit like of a bio of like your relationship story so people can connect with you more.
She's older than me. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Noted. He's older. Got it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, we met at a bar. And
we did meet at a bar on Oxford Street in Sydney.
But yeah, I think there was there was a definite immediate connection, and I think we didn't really necessarily like plan to sort of have a relationship or anything, but it happened that way. And like I was moving away, and Tiffany came to stay with me, and basically we sort of have never really left each other's side since then. I guess.
Since we first met, we just kind of So and my story's a little bit different in that I remember seeing Saul on the street in Oxford Street in Sydney. And I was heading towards the bar that we met at, and he was heading away from it. And he was in a big group of people. And I didn't notice at the time, it wasn't until later on in our relationship that I kind of realized that it sounds really cheesy, but it was almost like there was this light above his head as he walked past me. Like I noticed him, but it was almost like, so that was that. And then probably a couple hours later, I saw him in the bar that I'd walked down to. And, we kind of flirted and danced for quite a long time before we said anything to each other. But it was really, after the few hours of kind of making eyes at each other and kind of dancing, where we had this long conversation, it was just so refreshing to be able to have a conversation with someone where we were talking about, I don't know, just deeper things than the things that you normally would talk about when you meet someone. And like Saul said, we've literally been together ever since that night.
So how long have you guys been together?
It would be at least 15 years.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, Tiffany, one of the really cool things I remember, I was living with Tiffany at the time when she met Sewell in Sydney, Australia. And I remember you, at one point, we were sitting in your dining room and you had seen another guy before you met Sewell, and I can't remember his name, but you turned to me and you were like, did I seem this excited with that guy? And I thought about it. I was like, no, definitely not. So it was like you were connecting. You were really looking for what was true, like what was actually going on with your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So Tiffany and Sewell have been together for 15 years. You guys have a son. You're not married.
No.
Tiffany was coming to Access. Yeah.
No, that's it.
Tiffany was coming to Access classes like for a lot of years. That's where Tiffany and I met in Access, and then
we were in our own relationship for a little while there, weren't we, Shani?
Yeah, Tiffany lived with me in my van in America when I was like a full-on hippie, and we drove all over the West Coast of the United States. We had so much fun, and then you met Sewell, and then you left for a long time, like you went away. And then you guys both came back down the track, which was like really cool. I don't know if you guys want to talk, because I feel like there's so much in that probably span of time that is so indicative of what how relationships start, sort of like the direction we can go in terms of how the relationship influences our choices, and then how those relationships can evolve. Do you guys want to talk at all about that?
I'm happy to. And I think my kind of, because I think that's one of the things that I've realized with relationships through my relationship with Sewell is really like being able to have your own world and your own reality alongside of somebody else's. And, sort of kind of early on in our relationship, I was trying to do the let's do everything together thing. And that didn't really work out very well. But I'm just saying this because, my version of events or what went on for me with this stuff is probably, different to what went on for Sewell. But, definitely one of the reasons that I kind of moved away from Access was because of how I felt Sewell felt about it. And so, further down the track, I realized, I kind of moved away. One of the reasons I kind of moved away was because I was more committed or more interested in maintaining keeping him, I would say, than doing my thing. So it was sort of like this, if he doesn't like what I'm doing, then I should probably move away from it in case that's something that makes him go away from me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the big things for me and there were other elements as well. But then the interesting thing about him coming to Access, which would have been like 4 or 5 years later, I think, was we had something come up in our relationship where he went away to work for what was supposed to be 3 months with his cousin, and it ended up being 9 months. And in that time, I was living, I had a housemate living with me, and she was single, and we were going out all the time. And it was almost like I was living this single life in a way socially, because he was gone. And so, I had this one night out and I became interested in this guy. And then I started to really question, do I even want to be with just one person for all of my life? And then that, I don't know, it kind of, from my point of view, it kind of created a questioning in his world, or I'm not really sure what it created. But part of what happened with that was he started to go through all of my Access recordings from classes that I'd been doing for, years already. And I was a little bit like, I'm not sure if you're supposed to be listening to this stuff without having done the kind of core beginning things that you're supposed to do to be able to support you going. He was just listening to everything, like, and I saw him change really quickly through listening to all of these classes. And it made me remember and just realize how much gold is in these tools and how much change it really contributes to people and their worlds. And then actually Gary and Dane were coming to Australia to do a global foundation class. And Saul was like, Gary and Dane are coming to Australia to do global foundation. I'm going. And I was like, what? I was like, you're not going to an access class without me. And then that was it. I got recertified as a bars facilitator so I could put him through bars so he could go to a foundation class. And then, that was probably 10 years ago now or something.
I love how you started that whole thing where you indicated that your version of the events might be different, because that's just such a cool awareness that like you guys could be experiencing something similar. Like we're both there, but you experienced potentially your own version of. Soul, do you want to share a little bit about that? Because it's, yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time when I met Tiffany, I was interested in meeting people, but in some way in my world, I'd sort of like given up on that as something that was sort of realistic at the time. And so my idea was to like go do something on my own and kind of discover more of myself that way. And I feel like the moment that I kind of gave up on that as a possibility, it actually showed up, which was kind of strange, but that sort of happened a few times in my life as well before. And so, yeah, I guess that occurred. And then I think, I'd say I wasn't really ever like against access or anything in the early stages of our relationship. I just had never come across anything like it before. And yeah, like Tiff was saying, we used to listen to some recordings on road trips and stuff. And so I was definitely like curious but skeptical. And then, I'd say that sort of changing time in our life, like in our relationship, definitely like made me look at, what I really wanted. And it was just like a time of, I don't know, it was a different track, I guess, that started to open up. And so that the foundation class showed up, and I think you were there, Shannon, I remember, and like meeting lots of people that I'd heard on all of these recordings and everything. And my life really started to open up in a different way, like from that point forward.
I like fully have to like throw you under the bus, but I don't know if this is really a throwing you under the bus or like an acknowledgement thing. I think it's like both. You to date are still the most cognitive psychic experience I've ever had hearing somebody thinking. And it was right in the very, very beginning when you and Tiffany had just met, like really early on, because I was still in Sydney, because I left pretty soon after you guys got together, or like before you guys even really got together. But we were somewhere with a bunch of people on some grass. And I remember hearing you think towards me, freak. And I was like, did I just hear that? I literally thought you said it out loud, and I looked at you and you like weren't looking at me. You were like talking to somebody else. I was like, whoa. And I was like I fully made that up. But after time went on, it was like so crystal clear. So I want to like commend you for your ability to transmit communication. That was actually pretty amazing. And I get the resistance to access in the beginning, like, because it makes us, it really is different. You start functioning different. You look at the world different. You become different. And I know that being different can feel very unattractive to people until being normal and the same is so painful that you have to try something different.
I would say as well, just on that, like, I think in terms of different, like my idea of relationship was probably very like, normal. Like I just thought a relationship was like, I don't know, what this reality sort of projects as like a normal relationship. And so I think that time really, it also exploded like my kind of idea of what that was.
Totally.
Yeah. And so now, you know, I feel like I'm more easily able to see people choosing different things in relationship and not really necessarily understand it, but like have more ease with sort of receiving it and what they're getting from it. Whereas before it was very, I guess, a black and white concept for me before that.
Isn't that so interesting too? Because like if relationship is anything, it's like so not black and white.
Yeah.
One of the things I say, which is on the intro to the relationship series podcast, is that relationships are like snowflakes. They're completely unique. And that's what it's like. I know that like the willingness to have something different is then what allows the space for relationships to contribute what they can, rather than us like suffocating ourselves to death with what we think the relationship should be, which is really where most relationships go to die, is into the shoulds. Okay, so this is a good jumping off point. So my first question, what's your guys' if you had like a relationship philosophy, what is it?
Well, we definitely don't have an agreed upon relationship philosophy.
But isn't that also then a relationship philosophy between you? Like we don't need to agree on the relationship. I think that is kind of a cool relationship philosophy.
Yeah, and I think that's actually developed, like that we didn't start out with that for sure. Right. Like, you know, like Saul was saying, he came in with his, you know, black and white version of what a relationship is. And I probably came, well, yeah, I would have come in with my own one too.
Totally.
So we get fed all of this stuff about relationships through movies and
our parents.
You know, our parents and all sorts of different kind of concepts and ideas that come into our worlds. But I think that's one of the things that has really one of my philosophies that makes, and I think a philosophy with somebody else might have to be different too. So for me and for us, it's like really allow him to have his own world, his own reality. I mean, half the time, in a way, I don't even know what's going on in his world, you know, in a way. You know, because I'm like, that's his world. He gets to have that. He doesn't have to tell me every single little thing about what's going on for him unless he wants to, but he doesn't generally function like that. And I don't either. So I think, you know, for me, it's that thing of having my own world, my own work, my own reality, allowing him to have his and us living alongside of each other with those, I think is a big part of the philosophy, if we want to call it that works for us, from me. Yeah,
I would say, I don't know, from my perspective, I'd say maybe I'd call it more of a foundation of like a friendship. You know, I think we really get along, we really enjoy spending time together, and I think, you know, if things like, you know, get tough or aren't going great, there is always, I don't know, there's something about that friendship that seems to, you know, withstand that. And so I don't know if that's a philosophy, but I'd say that's, yeah.
Exactly. And I never know, and thank you, both of you, for that. I never really know how to ask that question, because it's like, how do you describe like how people, because, and the reason I like to ask that question is what I have observed through myself first, and then through facilitating and working with thousands of people using the tools of consciousness, is that the majority of people have sort of like they have a point of view about what they want out of a relationship. And that point of view might be not generative. It might actually be limiting to themselves and the other person. But what is a pretty universal phenomenon is that the majority of people don't really look at what the relationship is for before they get into one. So maybe that's what might be a better question, is like, well, what's relationship for you guys?
And, you know, I mean, for me, I remember being quite young, like probably early teens, and having this light bulb moment when I was walking up the street to my friend's house from my parents' house. And it was just really like, I don't need a relationship. Like that was I was like, I don't need one. If something comes along that's like amazing and awesome, I'll have it. But I'm not going to like, I saw a lot of people searching for relationships and looking for relationships. And that was like their whole world was like, I need to be in a relationship. And I was like, I just realized I didn't need one, which I think was I don't know why that dawned on me at that point, but I think it was just really helpful. Actually, that information coming into my world at that time was really helpful, because I was like, you know what, I don't need it, and I'm really open to something awesome showing up. So, you know, what's a relationship for? I think in a way it's like, well, does it make your life, do you enjoy it? I think would be the thing. It's like, if you enjoy it, great, have one. But if it's not enjoyable, don't do it.
Yeah, I would say the same. But also I think like there are certain maybe people in your life that you can like also learn a lot with, and I think we've definitely both had that from times in our life where it's like, you know, one of us will open a door to something that neither of us might have experienced, or we lead in a certain way that allows something different to show up for both of us. So yeah, I think that's part of a relationship too, is seeing, you know, something that you've never experienced or known before, that gets, you know, expanded upon by that person.
And I think the other thing with relationships for me is that they kind of require more of you sometimes than you would require of yourself if you didn't have one.
Totally.
You know? Yeah. Like there are certain things that you can keep hiding from if you don't have to be so close with one other person or many other people. You know, I was thinking earlier today before this podcast, I'm like, I don't think I'm very good at relationships a lot of the time, like in terms of like friendships and stuff. I'd like to be better, actually. You know, like Saul and I spend so much time together that we're like, we don't really have any friends. We have a lot of friends around the world that we also work with and stuff, which is amazing. But around here, like we don't like have dinners with people and catch up with people and their kids and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that is just, it really requires you. Well, the kind of relationship that I like anyway, it does require you to go deeper than maybe you would tend to go if it was just you.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I totally agree. That's sort of like relationship can either drive you more crazy or can purify you from your crazy. Yeah. So one of the questions I also would ask is like, how come you guys choose to be in a relationship? But I feel like you kind of answered that with the you enjoy each other and you like each other thing, which I think is, I think it's super easy to disregard that as like a valid foundation, even though I'm not really sure what would be a more honorable foundation than liking each other and enjoying each other. So greatest challenges and greatest rewards being together.
I'd say the greatest challenges is like, I think you both, like, we were sort of talking about it before, where you both come into a relationship with like things that you sort of have right in your world. And I think when you're like, when you're in a relationship with someone else, it's like those things inevitably like, you know, get challenged and you sort of like butt heads. And I think that would probably also be one of the greatest things about it for me, is like the freedom with that, when it sort of doesn't really matter anymore, and you can sort of see it for what it is without making it too like relevant or important. And, you know, knowing that sometimes, you know, the person that's there with you all the time can see things about you that you don't even really want to see about yourself. And, you know, that they can have that awareness, and they might also know that you don't want to look at it. And, you know, I think that can be something that's quite like challenging to sort of be with. But yeah, like having that allowance for that, I think, and space also allows for something, you know, like really quite different. I'd say that'll be it for me.
And now I forget the question.
Greatest challenges and greatest rewards, although maybe it's two separate questions, in being together.
Yeah. I think for me personally, one of the greatest challenges has been vulnerability.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, I hear that one.
Yeah. And Saul actually, has taught me so much. It's making me want to cry about vulnerability. Like from when we first were together, he was just this, beautiful, soft, kind of open, vulnerable guy who, was continually inviting me to be that, which, I didn't get shown that a lot when I was growing up. It was definitely not something that was a very present in my world and in my relationships when I was growing up. And it was really hard, but so rewarding. I'd have to say that is both of those things for me. It's just massive.
Cool.
Yeah, and even sitting here talking about that, there are so many places like in my life and in our relationship that I could be being way more vulnerable than I'm choosing to be, So it's the constant choice.
I love that reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, the constant choice to keep allowing yourself to open up, and knowing that anytime that I've really opened up in one of those places where it feels like the scariest thing ever, or like you're going to die or something if you open up about a certain thing, it just makes things better and easier.
And what a gift that you have somebody that is in allowance enough and not judging themselves or you, and to the degree that you can actually go through those evolutions.
Oh, it's like beyond words, really. Yeah, it's yeah.
So that segues me into like your most favorite or like most used tools in your relationship.
I would say for me, allowance is a huge one, and actually, it was. I don't know if it's also a tool. I think the willingness to lose someone. I was in the first ever relationships done different class that Simone Millicent and Brennan Watt facilitated, or we both were, and they facilitated me on this thing, which was it was probably so simple and so easy if you were just listening to the class, but I realized that I wasn't willing to lose him. And as soon as I got to the place of the willingness to lose him, and it was really like just someone asking me, would you be willing to lose him? And me having to choose that and go, yes, started to create so much, like something so much easier for me, and I think for our relationship. Like now I know that, if our relationship changed and we weren't together anymore, that I'd be quite happy on my own. Yes, it wouldn't be that easy, and I'd be like, oh, this kind of sucks for a while, but I know that I'm still me without him, So I think the willingness to lose the other person is a huge one for me, and allowance is like massive. Allowance of yourself in whatever ways you're showing up in the relationship in any moment. And total allowance of the other person showing up and being whoever they are showing up in that moment,
Can I ask a question? I would love for you to speak to or add on to the thing about, because I think we need to define allowance a little bit for people who might mistake it as acceptance or think that allowance means like letting somebody, like being an allowance of somebody abusing you. Can you talk a little bit more about the allowance that you mean and that you use?
Yeah. So I think, I think part of that really within a relationship with the allowance thing is not taking things personally, like recognizing that, you have stuff that goes on, right? And so if your partner's being stuffy in some way, like, they might come home and they're just being a complete asshole, it's like it's not about allowing them to be a complete asshole to you or abuse you, like you say, but if they're just in an assholey mood, then, just go somewhere else. Or, it's that the willingness to not resist and react to whatever energy they're being, I think. and not make it about you, not do this thing where you choose to like almost get in there and make whatever's going on in their world yours, when most of the time it has nothing to do with you, even if they think it does, even if they're directing it at you, you know.
Actually, that's really interesting. Well, there was a show we were watching last night, and this one lady had like broken up with her husband, and she was like, I thought I was so angry at you, but then you went away and I realized that I was just angry. And it made me look at it of like, yeah, you know, so much of the time it's like the people that are closest to us, we're like, oh, it must be your fault that I'm feeling like this. But, you know, I think that allowance piece is also like recognizing, like Tiff was saying, it's not always like personal. It's just like, you know, that whatever's going on might be going on for someone, and it might not have anything to do with you. It might have something to do with you. But I think allowance allows you to like find, you know, a path of ease through that.
Yeah, I 100% like allowance is, I didn't even realize how required allowance was in relationship, to be honest, until it got down to the point where it was like nothing else was going to work. It was either the relationship was going to not work or allowance had to prevail. Obviously, I've chosen allowance repeatedly, and it gets more and more all the time. So I definitely share that with you, Tiffany, for sure, about allowance being the most used tool for me.
And what, like, do you have some examples of how that shows up for you in your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, I would say I have like an allowance surge, like almost like once a month or like every couple months, where it's the requirement for allowance becomes really urgent in a way that, and not to be dramatic, but it becomes more necessary to be an allowance than the other cruisy times. Like right now, my partner is going through a really big, difficult shift in his world, and it can really bring out like the worst in him, not in a judgmental way, but it's so hard to be around. And just letting him be a black hole for however long he needs to work through his process. And fortunately, he works through it, I think, relatively quickly, but not making it personal. Because yesterday I started to make it personal, and then I went, nope, wait, I'm making this personal. Never mind. This has nothing to do with me. And just letting him fume. And like, so we have like really practical things that we do sometimes where when he's going through what he's going through, he can like what I call stress sleep. So he'll sleep like really gnarly, and he'll just like toss and turn all night long and like be really like express this really energy that's not particularly easy to sleep next to. So I know now, after being together for over 10 years, I know when it's coming. And I was like, hey babe, do you think that maybe you could sleep downstairs tonight? And he was like, totally. So we slept in 2 different beds, and I went down first thing in the morning to see him, and he was like in a completely different universe. So just actually creating practical, like literal space is also like a really helpful tool.
Yeah, totally.
Hello, this is Shannon in another outfit and another time and place. If you're enjoying these relationship-focused podcasts, I invite you to check out all of the sex and relationship content, previously conducted classes, and access consciousness classes that I have available for all of you on my website. It will be linked below. If you're ready to really begin to unwind, unlock, and transform the places where you've been stuck in creating the kind of relationships that make your life easier. If you haven't enjoyed sex, if you go crazy in any of these areas, please recognize you're not alone. These areas can be extremely rewarding, and they can also be extremely difficult. The more of you have, the easier these areas become. Who did you learn about relationship from? Did you receive an education about the kind of sex and copulation that would heal your body, create more joy for you and the other, and create more space, peace, and possibility? what kind of sexual education were you ever given? It's like, where do you go to access what's light and not constantly be in reaction to the projections, the expectations, the heavy, and the difficulty, the secrets, the control that can exist so dynamically in the area of sex and relationship. Check out these classes if you would like to change your life. Sewell, do you have like a go-to tool or point of view?
I mean, I wanted to do something different, but it probably would be Allowance as well. But I would say
totally. We can't knock it for being so effective in relationship.
Yeah. But I think I've noticed a lot like projections, like when you have a projection of someone and you just keep projecting that same thing, or like you basically maintain something, and often like you can't see like anything different until you sort of let go of that projection, or stop projecting basically. And I've definitely like been guilty of that and seen what can actually occur when when that projection is like no longer there. And so I'd say that's
so this is an interesting segue, like perfect, about creating relationship. Because one of the main, I would say, like theses that, so I've learned a lot of relationship tools from my stepdad, who is the founder of Access Consciousness. And he has written several, actually just only one, maybe just this one relationship book, actually, now that I think about it. I think it might just be one. It's called Divorceless Relationship. Oh, he's written two.
Sex is not a four-letter word, is that?
But that's a sex book. It's like slightly different. I would say relationship.
Sex is not a four-letter word, but relationship oftentimes is.
Right. Okay. So cool. So there's two. My whole point about that being, thank you, Tiffy. My whole point about that is that he was like the first person I ever really heard talk about like that relationships have to be created. And I really didn't understand what he meant when I first, he probably, to be fair, was saying it to me when I was very young. And so what you're starting to indicate, or what you're talking about with when you're projecting and expecting of somebody, I would say that's not creating, that's projecting and expecting, i.e. controlling and expecting the other person to be a certain way or do a certain thing, which isn't creation, it's control. And so can you guys talk a little bit about what creation has been like in your relationship? I guess, is that too broad of a question? Because I could ratchet it down a little bit if you need a little bit more specificity.
No, I think that's good. I mean, cool. I would say definitely one of the things that I've noticed seems to create a lot for us is when like someone's willing to go like no matter where the other person's coming or not, and that seems to like open up a space for us both to have more. So yeah, like there's I'd say there's been times where we've both like taken the lead in certain areas of our lives or relationships that I think has been like, oh well, if that person's doing that, then what can I create in this area? So it's kind of like that sort of thing where you're leapfrogging each other a little bit, and it seems to be something that works for us. I guess we're probably both a little bit like competitive as well. So yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, but it's funny actually you mentioned that, because I remember there was a time where Saul was just like, just really, I would say moving forward in like leaps and bounds, and that's also when kind of the remnants of the not willing to lose him stuff came up for me, right? So I'd already kind of gotten to the point where I realized, oh, I'm not willing to lose him and I have to be willing to lose him. So yes, okay, I will be willing to lose him, right? And then when this started happening where he was just, moving forward in these massive leaps and bounds, I noticed that thing in me a little bit where I was like kind of wanting to hold him back and freaking out a bit when he was expanding so much. And, it happened like about 3 times where we went out for dinner, and it was this thing where I was in this mode of like, like this very attractive mode of like,
we could call that needy control.
Yeah. But knowing what I was doing and ultimately choosing beyond it, like ultimately not allowing myself to be that reality, even though it was coming up. And I think that's such a cool thing about this journey of consciousness. And I think the gift of the Access Consciousness tools is that, you know, you might learn about a concept that you realize has been limiting you, but you can't necessarily, I mean, sometimes you can, but you can't necessarily just let go of it in that moment, then it's gone and it never raises its head again. It's oftentimes these little bits and pieces of this thing that will show up in different areas that you have to keep kind of committing to letting go of. And I think that you know, moving forward, and there was just such a beautiful gift watching him move forward in leaps and bounds, and then me letting go of my want to like stop him, and then allowing myself to not be choosing that in that moment, and then realizing later, oh, I am choosing this now. You know, I don't have to choose to move in the same leaps and bounds at the same time that he does, but, you know, be inspired by it, you know, and have the other person be inspired by your willingness to do that when you choose to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a real thing that's emerging in this conversation is the willingness to let the other person change, even if it's not a change that you understand or can keep up with or control, which that's like, in my mind, that's like relationship advanced astrophysics. You know, it's, that is, I think that's a real remedy for relationship stagnation, but it's a challenging one. It's really confronting. It confronts your identity. It confronts your position in the relationship and like what you think all that means. And the familiarity changes, which personally I like love. I like really thrive on the discomfort of getting more conscious. But I don't always love it when it's happening. But after the fact, it's the receiving is epic.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, you know, I think that's also one of the parts of the programming of relationship. Like to me, there's a lot of programming in the word relationship, right? We were talking about earlier. And it when that stuff was coming up in our relationship for me, I was like, oh my God, this feels like part of the programming that you're not supposed to grow beyond the other person in a way. And you need to kind of stay down there and maintain the relationship at this point. But I think ultimately that's the death of the relationship when you start to do that, because you start hating yourself, you know, and hating each other if you're not allowed to grow and change. And it becomes all a bit boring.
Yeah, it can become super boring. And I could see it would also be almost impossible for two people who are like actually interested in changing and growing and getting more conscious. It's like impossible not to change. So it seems to me a prerequisite that the relationship has to be able to endure transformation. Otherwise, it becomes a limitation.
Yeah, and even if that means the relationship going away, because that's often how it feels in that moment. You feel like the relationship can go away.
Right. And I would say that relationship as you knew it and what it was is going away.
True.
And that's where the creationship becomes the next step, because what was is no longer. So now if you're going to be together, now what's next?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So what, if you guys could pick one thing, could be more than one, that you wish you knew about relationship for you in the very beginning, like think like 17-year-old you, like what do you wish you knew then? What do you wish you could have told yourself then that you know now?
That's a great question.
It is a good question.
I think for me personally, it would be like the depth and the breadth of what relationship can be. Like it's so many different things for so many different people, and that like your relationship doesn't have to be like anyone else's, but also that, you know, all of those different relationships that people have, like it's I don't know, some kind of like understanding of the bigger picture. I feel like I had a very narrow idea of what relationship is, and just realizing how big and vast it is would have really helped a lot.
That's actually like the second or third time you've brought that up about how you had like a very narrow picture of relationship. So can you talk a little bit more about what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it was like, you know, two people that were going to be like together forever sort of thing. Like that was my idea of relationship. And then, and I think that, those two people, you know, like being a woman or a man, even though I was surrounded by like other examples of relationships,
Totally.
like I had, you know, lots of like gay and lesbian, you know, people in my life. And so I had other examples of what that could be. But I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting. So I would interpret what you said as starting the relationship with a conclusion about what the relationship is and needs to eventuate into, rather than starting a relationship from a question and then seeing what shows up.
Exactly. And I think that's that bit about the, you know, projections in a relationship as well, is like it doesn't allow you to see what is actually there in front of you. It just gives you the idea of what you think it should be. Which like that doesn't allow you to have much vulnerability or like space or ease. It's just
Well, totally. And that's also I would even call that dangerous, because how many of you guys out there listening, dangerous might be a little bit too much of a charged word. Just like imagine it's like funny dangerous, like dangerous. Like how many of you guys out there have sort of been in projection or expectation about somebody and not seeing who was in front of you, just like Soul just said, you don't really see what's in front of you. And then that wound up kind of biting you in the butt down the track, because you weren't really looking at who you were sitting in front of. You were in projection and expectation. You were projecting onto the person. So that's where projection and expectation can really do us harm, because we're not looking at who's in front of us. So we're lacking awareness, and you can't have awareness and expectation in the same vicinity. They don't cohabitate well.
Which is so phenomenal. I mean, the way you describe that is so perfect. And, you know, I have this example of someone who, you know, was married for 30 years or whatever, and their husband ended up cheating on them. And then the relationship broke down after, you know, 27, 30 years or whatever. And I said to them at one point, so truth, at what point did you know that he was the kind of guy that would do this to you? And she said, first date, you know, but she spent the whole 27 to 30 years or whatever of their relationship hoping that he would change, or trying to make her idea of what relationships should be the reality, rather than being aware of this person, and then ultimately judging them for being wrong and terrible and all that sort of stuff, rather than recognizing, actually, I knew this about that person from the very beginning. You know, I think a lot of people do that in relationships.
And agreed. And that was a really big impetus for me to have these conversations and to invite my, you know, singles and couple friends who I know have been through the ringer and through the washing machine and come out, you know, like have done the work and have really applied the tools of awareness and the priority of awareness to the relationship. For it's unusual. So I was hoping to be able to display these sorts of relationships for anybody that's, you know, looking for something different. So that's, you know, thank you for that, Soul. Tiffy, what do you wish 17-year-old Tiffy knew?
I wish I could take all forms of judgment out of her world.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Like it was so much pain, I would say, around trying to look a certain way and show up a certain way. And, even with things like taking your clothes off in front of people and being so like hideously obsessed with, not looking the way that I thought I should. And, just, I would say to have no ability to judge anything, anyone, or myself is what I would want to gift that 17-year-old me.
Wow. I love that. What an epically different future that choice leads to.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you guys would like to share on this topic? Anything I haven't asked for?
I think you've done an amazing job. And yeah, thank you so much for having us.
I just want to share one thing before we were coming on. Saul's like, what are we going to talk about? He's like, our perfect relationship. And I was like, God, I don't know. So I would just say there is definitely no such thing as a perfect relationship. Like, but having, for me and for us, I know the three of us, I can say that having a target of more awareness and consciousness is our own personal targets, and how much a relationship can contribute to that, really. Yeah, definitely not perfect, but full of all sorts of things.
Yeah, and that's why but that's also, it's really a curiosity for me, because it's a curiosity, and like a lot of people listening to this wouldn't necessarily know. Well, you guys actually choose to be together, and I also choose to be in a relationship, but there's a lot of people that we work with, that we know, friends that we have, who don't choose to be in a relationship, which I really love. And I think it's really cool that in this day and age, you can actually not be in a relationship and not be like, if I ever have Indian women in my classes, not being in a relationship is usually a great source of pain for their mothers. But a lot of the Indian women that are coming to Access in a lot of my classes in the last couple of years, it's really amazing how they're grown women, and they're the first generation that wasn't expected or forced into marriage. So they're really this new breed and this new generation of highly educated women who are not being socially and familially pressured into relationship. And I think we're in a very exciting time where relationship can be a choice, not a necessity or an obligation. I might be a little bit naive there, but I know that this is true for us in the cultures and the families that we were raised in. And it's even becoming true for very traditional cultures like India. So if you could choose if relationship was totally a choice, not a necessity, you weren't right to have one and you weren't wrong to not have one, from that space, then what? What do you truly desire? What would make your life? What kind of relationship could you have that would make the world a more beautiful, amazing place? So I thank you, beautiful Tiffany and Sewell, for sharing your energy and letting people into your worlds in this conversation. Such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who you know who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.